Welcome to TEPSA Talk, the podcast where leaders inspire, share, and grow together. TEPSA is dedicated to celebrating the incredible work happening in education. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations with leaders, changemakers, and innovators who are shaping the future of our schools. Whether you're looking for fresh ideas, encouragement, or a little spark to fuel your passion, TEPSA Talk is here for you. Imagine tuning in to hear how leaders are revolutionizing their schools, tackling challenges head-on, and fostering a culture of collaboration. Grab a coffee, hit play, and let's grow together. Welcome to TEPSA Talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of our TEPSA Talk podcast. I'm your host, Todd Neslony, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled every week to bring you thought leaders from around the world, and this week we have none other than a huge person that TEPSA loves so much, and that is Dr. Robert Thornell. Robert, thank you so much for being here. Tell everybody who you are.
Oh, this is great. Thanks so much. Well, I'm a longtime career member of TEPSA. I was, a teacher. I was the elementary principal for a while, and then I jumped up to Big Bad Middle School, which we need more middle school people at TEPSA. And that was actually, those two jobs were my favorite in my career. And then I moved on into central office, which I call the dark side sometimes. But my job was working with principals, coaching them, supervising them, helping them do their job a little bit. And I retired a couple of years ago, and I work for the Center for Model Schools. And I get to kind of fill my passion and dream. I go around the country, again, working with principals and central office leaders, kind of just on their job, coaching them and helping them in any way possible. So it's kind of fun. But I look forward to TEPSA every year.
Well, you know that us at TEPSA, we are huge fans of yours. So I am super excited for this conversation today. And for those of you listening, just something to keep in your mind, and we'll talk about this some more towards the end, but Robert is also leading a masterclass at our TEPSA Summer Conference, June 10th through 12th. At the Kalahari in Round Rock, Texas. So if you like what you're hearing today, just know you can sign up for 2.5 hours of Robert and tackling a little bit deeper what we're talking about today.
And if you don't like it, give me a second chance. Come on.
There you go. Whether you like it or not, you're gonna get good stuff. This is why TEPSA keeps working with you, because you have so much good stuff. And I love the topic that we're covering today, and what also your masterclass is about, and that's juggling the job. And I think that when we hear that word, I feel like if we would have heard the title Juggling the Job 5-10 years ago, we would have a totally different definition than what we may have now when we think about as an administrator or supervisor trying to juggle the job today.
Absolutely.
And so give me just a brief overview of I may hear this and go, okay, yeah, really, Robert, you can help me figure out how to juggle things. Like, give me the skinny over what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. Well, the first thing I got to say is, I juggle balls and do all those things, but I also juggle torches. And when I think about them lighting on fire, that's what I think about a principal's job sometimes. And so that's why we're not just juggling balls or plates or knives. We're juggling fire sometimes. But so that's kind of a fun thing that I like to play with and do. But honestly, the idea is this. There's so much research out there, and my heart and passion was always instructional leadership. That's a part of it, and that is a huge part of a principal's job. But it's not the only part, right? There's also communication and parents, and these days we got to be a servant leader. We're talking, we got to take care of teachers, because man, we lose our teachers and we're out, right? And so there's a servant leadership aspect, and then I talk about how we have to be a learner ourselves. Right. And so that's another component, that if we don't take time to do that as a principal, both to model it for others, but also just for our own peace and mind, and then, celebrating and reflecting and then telling our story. So, I kind of break it down into those five categories. We got to do those things and just a little bit of everything. And I think a lot of it is just being, it looks hard, just like juggling looks hard if you don't know how to do it, but really it's a simple pattern. You just got to practice. Right.
I love that you literally juggle as well. I love this topic, but you literally can juggle on top of that.
That's right.
So I'm an administrator or supervisor, somebody listening today, and I'm thinking, okay, I hear you, Robert. There's a lot of things that we have to juggle to do well. Sure. But Robert, I don't even know how to keep one ball in the air. Like, it all feels overwhelming. And you even shared, you've got experience from the teacher perspective elementary, middle school, central office, and the work you're doing now with leaders from across the country. Sure. And so where do we even begin with trying to get our lives in order at all to even comprehend the idea of juggling?
That's great. I mean, hey, if we use the juggling model, we got to start with a good throw. Just one little simple thing. I've got to be able to do one thing well. And I think that's the thing that can get overwhelming is we try to do everything. And so my first thing principle is, what do you do well? And let's work on that. And for some people, they're really good at taking care of people. Okay, let's do that. And now, after we get really good at that, now we do need to practice now in the instructional leadership time. Or maybe I'm real good internal, but my communication with outside of the campus, I need help with that. I need somebody to help me do that. And so let's just focus on that one thing. It's kind of like learning a new trick, juggling. I can do this, but now I got to practice to do something else. And so, I just really encourage, we got to break it into little small things, look for those small wins and then and go from there. And depending on the school and the context and the person, everybody starts in a different place.
Yep.
I can't come in and say, oh gosh, if you would just communicate better, everything will be fine, because that might not be your recipe. Somebody else, it might be, hey, we just need to, if you would just, do more walkthroughs, that's going to fix everything. Well, that's not it, right? Everybody's different. And so I think that's the hardest part sometimes is when you are feeling overwhelmed and juggling all these different things is let's just take a deep breath. Let's think about which one do we want to focus on, and let's get really good at that.
And you said something really powerful though, that I hope people hear. And that is, you're not going to go into a school and just tell somebody, if you just did this, that would fix all this other stuff, because everybody is so different. And I think sometimes with the advent of social media and the heavy usage we have of that, we see some administrators online who are killing it, who may be like, oh yeah, I do this and it changed everything. And we watch and go, but I already do that and I'm still struggling. Absolutely. And I think it's so important, like what you said, to find your strength and start there. And what I would say, and correct me if I'm saying this incorrectly, because I know you've got a lot more experience in this area than I do. If they're an administrator listening today going, I'm so broken, I can't even think of something I do well right now, lean on those around you that you work every day and you respect what they have to say, and ask them, what is something I really do well? Because I think sometimes, in my opinion, we miss our gifts because we're so bogged down by other stuff that it takes another person that we love and respect to say, are you kidding me? Yep. You do this really, really good and nobody else does. I know
absolutely. And you know what? It's
but this is not normal.
It's a lonely job, right? You're the only one on the campus, and so I encourage, whether it's a mentor, a coach, or just a friend. Maybe it's somebody on the campus. Maybe it's another principal in your district. But have a person. You say, what do I do well? Or how can I talk this out? I think that's so important. And we miss that a lot of times.
Now, Robert, when you were trying to identify areas that you wanted to work in as an administrator or central office, and I know it's really easy to find multiple areas you want to work in, how did you prioritize for yourself what areas you grew in so that you could do it piece by piece and not be overwhelmed by the whole picture?
Yeah. Well, some people might disagree with me, but I was always kind of a people person, and so that it gravitated naturally to walk the building and talk to people and see them. The instructional leadership, really, I'm embarrassed to say that had to come later, right? I had to use my strengths of just getting to know people and kind of, knowing what buttons to push, right? And who was good. I think I learned a lot in my first principalship. Was an elementary school and just got the people that were great and I love it. But I look back and think, I'm not sure I helped them instructionally like I could have, but I took care of them and they're still good friends. And I leaned on that strength that I had of mine. The next school that I went to be honest with you, I went there with a purpose, and that purpose was from the superintendent down. They needed help instructionally. And that was something I had to really focus in on. And so then I learned a lot. Yeah. And what I always say, it's about being practice too. It really is. I can walk through classrooms, but then I got to practice. What am I looking for? And then what do I, how do I give feedback to actually change it? All those are little tiny skills that all work together to do that. So some of it I think was based on what I felt comfortable with, but then I think sometimes the context of your school and job and what they need. You had, as a leader, you kind of have to morph and adapt to the needs of the people that you're serving. And so I think those are real things. And of course now, the job of a teacher is more demanding than ever. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to remember that. And I think the one thing I try to remember is that the principal's job harder than it's ever been too. And so that is important. I had a mentor of mine one time say, I give you grace, but that doesn't mean you don't do your job. Right. And I've stuck with that. I mean, I really loved that, because it's like, we all have a job to do. It's going to be hard, and we're going to make mistakes, and that's the grace that comes with it. Whether that's the dropping the ball when you're trying to juggle, you just pick it up and start again. And I think that's important. I never strive for perfection. I just want to be consistent.
Yeah, I love that. Not striving for perfection, just wanting to be consistent.
And I think that's what your teachers want of you. They want to know what to expect, right? The ones that struggle, the principals I think struggle the most are the ones that come in one day and say one thing and come in the next day and say something else. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. Just, hey, this is what we believe. People will adapt to it, and they'll respect you if you do that, in my opinion.
Well, and I think too, what you're saying is great, because it's reminding administrators that it's not going to be easy to remain consistent, and people are going to have a problem with it at first when they're not used to consistency. Yeah. But they all line up because they realize this is how things are. Yeah. And this is how they consistently are. So I'm not being as surprised by things. It's
just like students, right? They adapt to a teacher that's more structured and one that's loose. They know within a week, right? And I tell principals all the time, your staff knows what's important to you. So by your actions. And so we have to do that and work through that.
Well, part of juggling is also taking care of you. Yeah. And so what do you do to prioritize your own mental, physical, whatever health it is too, so that you can be the best at what you're doing, regardless of whether that's being a father, a spouse, a friend, a coworker, a supervisor, whatever that is? How do you maintain your own sanity?
Yeah, so that's a good one. And I think that's one of those things. Everybody's a little different. For me, one of the things I share all the time is when I was assistant principal, it was a piece of cake. There were some long days, but I didn't have gray hair as assistant principal. When I became a principal, all of a sudden that burden and that weight, is on your shoulders. And so, a couple of things that I did. I had a mentor friend of mine that it was a principal, and they spent and she said, don't feel guilty about it. But, remember in the old days, before there was so much social media, you get all these journals on your desk. And she would mark off about an hour a week somewhere in her calendar, and she would close the door in her office and look through some of those and read them. And I didn't get to do that all the time, but I will say I'm a big advocate for some sort of reflection time each week. That really helped me. For me, it was a journal. I have a journal idea, and it makes no sense to anybody else but me, but it was a scribbling thing, as ideas. But sometimes when I was thinking about, hey, what do I want to do next year? I'll flip through it and I'll find some ideas. Or sometimes if I'm coaching a principal now, we tried this. So I think that taking the time to stop and celebrate and reflect in quiet time, whatever that means to you, if that means taking a walk every day, if that means, reading something. But that's for me. I did. I tried to, and I tried to do it before I went home for the weekend. Mm-hmm. So whether that was Friday afternoon or Friday morning, that's what I try to do that. The other thing that I try to do as a principal, when I was having a bad day, you can sit at your desk all day long, right? There's always emails, there's always reports, there's always stuff to do. And when I would get overwhelmed, I would just catch my breath and I would say, I'm walking down to kindergarten. Yep. Just get up and go remember why you were there. Walk the lunchroom and see the kids. And that always helps me. Right, because kids were always fun. I'd take the balls and go juggle in the classroom or something. But just to catch your breath and say, hey, this is why I'm here. Yeah. And then if it was really bad, my secretary knew it's a Whataburger day. And she'd say, it's a Whataburger day. And she would go get me Whataburger. And that was that was my thing, right? And but those I think those are them. But I do think that there's always more to do, and you've got to be okay with taking care of yourself, whatever that means. And you have to, and I think not only taking care of yourself, I think you have to be intentional about that reflective celebration time. Like, really, what does it look like? What went well this week? Mm-hmm. And talk about that. Or what's coming up next week that I'm looking forward to, and just catching your breath.
I love that.
Right.
Well, Robert, I love that your current job is helping coach administrators because that is why I'm so pumped for the people that are going to be part of your masterclass this summer at the summer conference. And so if people are listening going, what's a masterclass? Well, let me tell you, it's 2.5 hours, uninterrupted time with a specialist in a certain area that us at TEPSA have said, this is a master at what they do. Let's give them some time where there is only a certain amount of seats. It's limited space, but they get to dive into a topic. And you were one that we reached out to about juggling the job because we know how important that is. And so if people are considering, okay, why should I sign up for a masterclass? Sure. What am I going to get from Robert? Give us the spiel over why they should come to you and what they can walk out with.
Okay. So here's going to be the limitations of my juggling. I can only juggle 3 things at once, but I really, in this course and over the course of time, I talk about 5 things that a principal has to do well. And I've kind of already mentioned a bit. Instructional leaders 1, servant leadership's 1. You got to be a lead learner yourself. The third one is you got to tell your story. And the fourth one. And the fifth one is that celebration reflection. So in those 5 things, we're going to talk about, and I'm going to share activities and things that I have done with those, but there's also be some time for self-reflection. Like, how do I plan for those things within my own job? How do I do those things? So I have, in all my years of doing this, I've got some forms and some easy things that I will share with them, some ideas and activities that they can replicate or change however they want. And I think that'll be part of it. But it does come down to those 5 things and how do we juggle those things? Because I believe, we could call them whatever we want. Those are the terms that I use for them. But, the research and everything we know about what an effective principal does, it kind of encompasses that umbrella. And so we're going to just talk about being intentional about all of them and what does that look like, in your work and hopefully get them excited for the next school year and that they can plan and have a few takeaways that'll help them do better.
I love it. And I can't wait to drop in and get some nuggets of wisdom from you too. And even if you've already signed up for the summer conference, you can still go in and add a masterclass. So just let us know. We'll get a masterclass added to your registration. We can take care of that. But as I said, seats are limited. Sure. So you don't want to wait till you arrive the day of and say, let me add that in, because there might not be a seat for you. Definitely make sure you get that in
and
there.
We may light the torches outside by the pool. We got to talk about that.
There you go. Well, Robert, thank you so much for being a guest today on the podcast. We really appreciate it. If people want to connect more with you, how can they?
Sure. Twitter and LinkedIn and Instagram. On Twitter, it's just @Thornell5. Instagram is intentionally bold. And then my name, Rob Thornell on LinkedIn. Those are usually the 3 that I use the most. I try to interact with them. And can I put one more plug in? I'm going to, in February, I am going to be at TEPSA's Region 7 principals meeting and talking to them. So I could looking forward to going to Region 7. Thank you guys.
There we go. Right. We love Robert Thornell here at TEPSA. So we hope everybody listening or watching enjoyed this conversation today. Join us again next week for another all new episode of the TEPSA Talk podcast.
All right.